On this episode, we talk with Craig Foor about teaching your kids about finances.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Joel, you look like you have a glow about you.
You know, you're pretty handsome yourself, buddy. Yeah, we're fresh off the Sarasota week of escape, and I'm feeling refreshed, I think.
As am I.
Yeah, this was a good time to get down. We both ourselves, so Jackie and I, you and Julie, and our good friends Matt and Courtney, who helped organize this lovely trip down to the beautiful Sarasota. Oh gosh, the conversations that we had, the time away, I'll just be really honest with you though, coming back here to Indiana, here's what I realized. When you don't spend, all it takes is about a week away from children to realize how loud children are.
That's
the
true.
Noise level. Because Jackie and I met all of them at the airport. We all got in the car, and when Jackie and I just turned to each other and go, it's so loud. It's so loud. But we were so grateful to see, to be back with them, to be back here. And listener, we are thrilled to be back here with you as well on yet another episode of the Dudes and Dads Podcast. Glad to have each and every one of you here. Andy, here's the deal. We reached out to our listening community and we said, hey, we love some feedback. Specifically, we said
about this last episode about busyness and people stop their busy schedule.
Yeah,
call the voicemail line.
The hurry thing, and they called the voicemail line because we said, hey, we want to give you free stuff. And apparently that was all it took. So, so we want to just take a quick moment to hear that feedback and give a listen right now.
Hey, this is Greg Serafino, and I've you allowed me to be a guest speaker with Jason Weir one time on the show, and just sharing a little bit of my story. But in your podcast on eliminating hurry, you asked us to give some feedback, so I thought I would just let you know. It's a little ironic in some ways, the ideas of some things that I do to eliminate hurry in my life. One of which is I have a 35 to 40 minute commute every day, one direction, and so I do some listening to podcasts and things like that. But at the same time, I feel like I'm just constantly absorbing information and trying to process all of that. So in that 35 to 40 minute drive, I will listen for about 15 to 20 minutes to a podcast, and then I just shut everything down. No music, no audio, not just drive and just meditate and just think and process. So one of the practices I have, I guess in summary, is that I will do that. I will just try to take a moment and a few moments while I'm driving and just think about what I've learned, or think about what I've heard, or think about what I've read that morning in my devotions, and just try to process that before I begin to have a massive amount of more input into my life, because it's always busy, always moving. So anyway, that's my feedback for that. Do what you will with that. I appreciate you guys. You have a great podcast.
Hi, my name is Tess. I live just north of Austin, Texas, and I'm a recent listener. And thinking about busyness, first, I think that busyness, or saying that you're busy, is kind of a way of showing higher social status. To say I'm busy, I have things going on. I think that it's, if you just said, oh, what'd you do last weekend? And said, oh, we're so busy. Just said, I watched 8 movies and ate 60 chicken nuggets. I think that, would not be something that you necessarily want to share. And I think busyness is something that we really seek to share with each other, and it's something cultural that just shows that we're important and that kind of thing. For me, I commute. I'm a graduate student, and I commute a decently long commute. If it's 40 minutes, it's really fast and exciting. And what I find myself doing when I have that busyness, not because I'm going to be late, because I leave early, it's feeling like I'm going to lose time to work during the day. And I find myself constantly switching lanes. And I also will keep track of certain cars when I switch lanes to see if my lane switch was successful. And I find myself completely overwhelmed by when, my husband has sat down and we're like, let's do the math. It really doesn't make a difference. So that's one of my symptoms of being way too hurried. And to solve that, I'm really seeking to say no. As a graduate student, I feel like I have to do everything or else I won't be eligible when I go to get a job or, any type of future thing I might seek to do. And so I say yes to everything, and it usually, catches up at the end of the semester, and I'm working all day, I'm working at night, I'm not spending time with my husband, and it really kind of eats away what gives me peace, which is not working and being at home and spending time watching movies and eating chicken nuggets. And so that's something I'm working towards. I've been asking my husband to just remind me, and as I'm getting ready for the fall, and I'm doing a bunch of things right now, I'm trying to think ahead and think what would the busiest day look like if I commit to all this. And Andy, I know that you talked about this with, just having so many things going on and committing to so many things, and that's something that's definitely permanent in my life. But I was going to say, I found out about you guys from the Real Talk Christian podcast. I think it's awesome. I'm not a dude, I'm not a parent, but I just love listening to you guys, and it's really a great way to fill the commute time. So I think you guys are great, and I can't wait for the next episode. Thanks.
Hi, I was calling because I had heard you guys' recent podcasts about healthy and unhealthy busyness, and I just thought that I'd share my 2 cents since you guys asked. So I think that I kind of have like a little pros and cons, like a little chart of unhealthy busyness can be feeling disconnected from God. And a great book that I read called To Hell with the Hustle, the author wrote, God is always speaking to us, but so is the world, and the world is usually louder. And I think that speaks a lot when we're too busy and we're making ourselves too busy, is that we just hear the world and we don't make time to spend and listen to God. And with that, if we're making ourselves too busy and we don't hear God, then we say, oh, I don't have time for a Sabbath. So then our minds can't slow down in order to hear from Him. And also another point is we become busy from having idols in our life too. I like to think that we worship what we love. What we love form our habits form our days, weeks, months, and years. And then also we feel stressed when we aren't doing anything now because we live in a culture now where it's always go, go, go. You always have to be doing something, even if it's just scrolling through your phone. So I feel like that's a real sign of unhealthy busyness, is where we're just always stressed if we're literally trying to do nothing. But then healthy busyness is feeling connected to God and our family, being satisfied with where God has us in our lives, being content in Him and His gifts, having a family Sabbath to recharge as a family and set our eyes back on Jesus, and to take our thoughts captive. In another book that I read called Disciplines of a Godly Man, the author wrote, a Christian mind is impossible without the discipline of refusal. So there are a lot of things, in order to have healthy busyness, there are a lot of things that we have to refuse to do if they'll be detrimental to us, because we have to make decisions that are best for us and for our family, because we need to give them our time. And I think that as dads, our busyness and habits dictate the busyness and habits of our family. How busy we are determines how busy our family is. If we're too busy and have poor habits, then it's going to negatively affect our family. So that was just my 2 cents. So my name is Derek Wisner. Have a good one.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for calling in. We appreciate it. We know it sometimes for some of you, it's a brave move to call, to leave a voicemail, especially when you know that it could be aired to billions of people So thank you, each and every one of you. We got some good stuff coming your way. As long as do we have all of their information?
We have their phone numbers.
Great. Okay. We will be in contact with you so that we can mail you something nice. We're in the midst of developing some further gifts for our listeners. So be patient, but it's coming your way. Thanks so much.
And Joel, before we get into it tonight, I want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by That Story Show.
Hello, I'm James Kennison, and I host a clean-cut comedy podcast called That Story Show, where we put your hilarious real-life stories and anecdotes in the spotlight. In other words, you send in your stories, and we share them with the world. We tell stories about embarrassing moments, miscommunications, people trying to get into the wrong cars, silly things kids say, goofy stuff our pets do, stuff we can all relate to and laugh at. So listen and find out how you can send in your own stories to be read on an upcoming episode. Find That Story Show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcast app, or just say, Alexa, play That Story Show. Hope to hear from you soon.
James. Yeah. Hey, go check out That Story Show. Good friends of the podcast. Love them all over there. Andy, if we yell at Alexa, if we say play Dudes and Dads podcast,
I'm not sure.
Do we know what happens? We'll have to investigate.
Let us know if you try.
Yeah, let us know. See what happens.
Support for this show also comes from Everence Financial, helping individuals and organizations combine faith and finances through retirement planning, banking, and other financial services. You can find out more at everence.com/Michiana. Securities offered through Concourse Financial Group, Securities Incorporated, member FINRA, SIPC.
Hey, speaking of Everence, Andy.
Yes, Joel.
We do have a guest here.
We do, and that guest is Craig Foor from Everence. We wanted to bring him in a little bit and talk about kids and finances, teaching your kids about finances, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But Everence does have a youth savings week coming up, and we wanted to touch a little bit about that too. But before that, though, Craig, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, Craig, as we always like to do, we need to have the dad stats. We need to know about you, your family, the kiddos, any embarrassing things you want to share about any of them. It's all fair game here. So again, welcome and tell us more about yourself.
Sure. So we live over in Wakarusa, northern Indiana, and my wife is a school PE teacher. She's been a PE teacher for almost 20 years now.
Nice.
I have 3 girls, so I will take your prayers now.
Yeah, amen.
From everybody.
Well, Joel has 3 boys, 1 girl. Yep. I have 2 boys, 2 girls. So yeah.
Andy tried to keep it even over there.
Yeah,
it was good.
Yeah. The reason I'm wearing the hat is because I have no hair because I have 3 girls right now. So super blessed, and they are ages 14, 10, and 7. So high school starting this year, which is kind of a little bit scary for us. So that's, I've been with Everence Financial for almost 20 years now. Been in the industry literally ever since I got out of college.
Wonderful.
I love talking about money. And so when Andy invited me to be on this thing, I'm like, let's do it.
Let's do it. We try to bring in real professionals here. And this is no exception. So we're glad to have you here. Andy and I, as we've had, and we're so glad to partner with Everence, we really see our conversations about financial wellness as really being a critical thing for families, for family wellness. And I know the work that I do with families, particularly families that find themselves in a season of struggle or crisis, it's usually falls into one of 3 categories. And one of those categories that's causing major issues is financial health.
Sure.
And I think so much of financial health does have to do with, there's a big educational piece on it. Particularly if our situation and others, where our parents were in a very different financial situation than we are, or the landscape was way different, or they had my parents were always very, very smart with money, but I feel like what they learned, I don't feel like they had maybe a clear-cut path forward for how to teach us about money. It was kind of I went to college, I took out a lot of loans, and then my first interaction with trying to get financial wellness was figuring out how to pay those loans back, which I will be doing until my next child goes to college. So is there a way that when can we start with our kids.
Yeah.
When can we start with our kids having that conversation? And in your experience, how do those conversations start, and what is the content of that discussion with the kiddos?
Sure. Yeah. Well, times have changed, right? I mean, money itself is completely different than when we grew up.
Yeah.
And trying to teach kids about money is family dynamics of money are really always pretty difficult, right? And so, I mean, I think you can start as early as possible. And when we were talking pre-show, we were talking about just allowances in general and how to understand, like, listen, we're gonna pay you for doing some things around the house, but also your role as a child is to help out around the house as well, right?
Yes.
And so, it's just trying to develop. I think the most important thing is just the saving habit, like the habit of saving. When you're out of college and you have these student loans, I should be saving in a 401k. I should be putting in an emergency savings. The things that you should do, but having that debt kind of inhibits that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's really just having those open conversations. And, full disclosure, none of us are perfect. I mean, I do this for a living, and I'm not great at it because life gets in the way. You start doing different things, and money takes a back seat a lot of times. And so it's definitely not easy, but just instilling that habit of saving at a young age is something that can be done, whether it's here's quarters and here, here's a couple dollars for doing that chore. Thank you for doing that. Now, what do we do with it? Now what do you want to do with it?
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, the dynamic of the lack of visibility around money, because like the examples you just gave are with, like, there's a tangible dollar, a tangible quarter, whatever it is in front. You and I am lucky if I ever have a few bucks in physical dollars in my wallet. Right. And, that was super funny. Andy and I are, as we were down in Sarasota, we went to an ice cream shop, and they were a cash only
Which is freaky. You're just going,
like,
oh no, what do I do?
And we're like looking around. It's like, does anyone amongst us
can we borrow cash?
have cash? And that's, I think, it's so interesting because our kids see us pay for stuff with plastic and not the physical dollar. What are the implications of that, do you think, for them?
Yeah, I think it's trying to have that open conversation, and it's really difficult with my 7-year-old and my 10-year-old. It's a little easier with my 14-year-old to go, like, at the end of the day, just because you see this happen, we're paying this off every time, and every month the bill is going to come due that we have to exchange money for what we've purchased. But it's a different world out there. And I struggle with that a lot to go. I even train, when we do have cash, and a lot of times even for the chores, my wife and I are scrambling to find a few dollars laying around the house, but it's sitting there going, can we strategically pay cash for a few things just so they do see that? I mean, you look at the, giving through church, everything's giving online, right? Yeah. So I remember vividly as a kid seeing my grandparents drop money in the offering plate.
Sure.
Well, that doesn't, you think about it at church, it doesn't happen very often anymore. And so, yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think we've done for our kids. So we've been able to still continue giving the kids cash. And so our kid, like, for, in exchange for allowance and things. And I think that's been helpful, because then they can physically see, I have this much in my wallet, as opposed to just having it, in the back of their head. And we know that one day, soon they're going to need to, they have a bank account too, but they'll have to get a card attached to that at some point. But it's been good for them to be able to say, this is real. This is cash. There's a limited amount, and I know how much I have based on what's in my wallet.
Yeah.
So that's been good.
Yeah. One of the things we did last summer was again, I'm a planner, so I do these type of things, but I made a chore board where they could pick index cards of various chores. And that worked really well as long as we kept up on it, because you're busy with ball games and all that fun stuff. But it was nice because they literally could see a value per whatever they were doing, and then they actually physically received cash. Now, that was a struggle to go get that cash and have it on hand, but
it's the problem is that so many of these things require follow through on my part as the parent, and that's like, and so you just have to, I think, plan that out. Be aware that that's going to be part of the dynamic. I have found, maybe we're weird, the weekly chore chart thing. I like your idea. I like your idea better, because as we've had our weekly chore chart, I don't feel like our kids have had like the one-to-one, like I do this is the result sort of thing. It just is like, oh, okay, I got weekly stuff that I have to do that I would rather sit and do something else with or whatever.
Sure.
And I think that physical, tangible feedback of when I do this, or in these instances, this is the result from it, is helpful, especially because, I mean, just a little psychology here. Like most of our young people, even well into their teenage years, are not thinking they're not having abstract thought. So the more concrete that we can be with, like, when you do this, this is the result, and here's the thing that tangibly could be in front of you, is helpful. Circling back though to the idea of savings, in your mind, is that for financial wellness in general, is that the single greatest? I mean, if you were to drill down and say, what's going to help my kids over the long haul through their young years into adulthood, is that the single, would you say that's like one of the single greatest practices to set them up long term?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's savings, but I also think it's spending too.
Mm-hmm.
Like understanding, you can't spend more than you make, right? Mm-hmm. And you think, you think of the US these days, we almost have a negative savings rate from a saving standpoint. And so I think if we can teach our youth to hey, don't spend more than you make, that's going to be that will really be the number one thing that's going to set them up really well. And, kind of to the student loan thing, that hinders what you can do with that. And sometimes it's inevitable. I mean, it's nothing that any of us did bad. All of us probably had student loans, but it's just trying to get them to understand, hey, if I have $1, I can only spend $1.
Yeah.
Like, the credit card thing that you see me swipe isn't something where I'm just charging up money left and right and buying trips and stuff. So it's trying to understand. And that's difficult too.
Yeah.
A 7-year-old to understand what's going on there.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So kids who are younger, like let's say 7-year-olds, and I've got a 6-year-old right now. She's my youngest. How is the best way that you think to teach them about not only spending but savings and tithing and things like that? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I love going back to the Nathan Dungan share, save, spend, right? The 80-10-10 rule. And there are every family is going to be a little bit different on those percentages, but that, you have this $1 and where do we split it up with? The first goes to tithing, the second piece goes to saving for long term, and the third one goes to spending what you want. And the reality, like I look back at our history as a family, my kids are all different in how they would view it too. Sure. So my 14-year-old will save every last dime. I mean, she's got a savings account that she's put together from babysitting, and I mean, it's pretty impressive. Yeah. She just doesn't spend money. The 7-year-old will go to Meijer and we'll sit there in the toy aisle for a half an hour trying to figure out how we're going to spend all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's and part of it is, I think too, until you've got actual labor hours behind your money, like the babysitting thing, she's well aware of what she had to put into to get those dollars, right? Sure. Like that's the thing. And to all of you babysitters out there, we thank you. We could use more of you. So keep it up. But I think it's just a really interesting thing around, particularly like in our society here, where, there's the accumulation of debt, the ongoing accumulation of debt, the, wages have not kept up with that. There's a lot of other financial things going on in the background that I feel like we don't pay attention to until it really hits home for us. In your conversations with families, I'd be interested if you have a sense about this. with regard to debt management, and maybe we'll go and say specifically, because we mentioned it, educational debt management, because you've been in the industry as long as you have, do you feel like the conversation has changed in that area over, are you going to college? If so, what is the financial conversation around education? Because I know I am talking with my soon to be seventh grade son about, like, he's again, eldest child, wants to have a plan, whatever that's about, and we're talking about the future of education for him. And in the background, my wife and I are going, okay, my wife went to a private university for 5 years. I went to a private university for 5 years. We got married. That's 10 years of private education debt that we just put together, and we said, "Till death do us part." And we look at those realities, and we go, we absolutely 100% do not. Well, and I should say, did that, graduated, and then we had a recession.
Sure.
And so it was even compounded.
So it was even worse.
Even worse. Mm-hmm. We do not want that for our kids. We will be intentionally, as best we can, saving for them. Now, we're still in a situation, though, like our number one debt, our number one concern, and what we are working the hard on is still our educational debt. So we're trying to work at that. Well, maybe we can invest some in their future education, but it's like, it's going to be a while yet till we can give the full attention that I think that we would want to. What's your sense with families now about how they're talking, having those kind of conversations, setting expectations correctly? It's like, my eldest wants to go to Notre Dame, and I just, God bless him, and that would be wonderful. But I know what tuition is over there alone, and so I'm just kind of curious about how those discussions go these days.
Yeah, so I think it's a couple things. I think the days of every graduating senior from high school automatically the next fall going to college, I've seen that shift, that dynamic shift quite a bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gap years now. There's a lot of high school seniors that want to figure out what they want to do. And I think it's a couple things. I think it's just the generation that's coming up, just the different philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know that I need this, but I also think I've seen that a lot of them are really conscious on money, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to dive in, head first to $20,000 a year in debt until they figure out, I want to do this with my career.
Right.
And so I found that a little bit refreshing in the fact that they're cognizant and conscious of that commitment to go to college. Yep. From the parent standpoint, I mean, very rarely are we going to be able to fund education for our kids, right? Fully fund education, even though we want to. And I've always taken the kind of the philosophy when I'm meeting with clients is, hey, you can't get loans for retirement.
Right.
We can get loans we can help our kids with education with loans. They can get loans, and it's not optimal, but it's still, it's important to save for you as well. And if we have the cash flow to help out and to do that, then great, do it. But it's that happy medium between both. Very rarely do I see parents that give so much to their kids' education that they don't save for retirement as well. And there's some tools to be able to do a little bit of both as well. But yeah, I think, overarching, I think just things have changed a little bit when it comes to that.
Do you think moms and dads, and this is a little bit of an aside to it, but I'm always, because I think folks in your industry and your area, I have a lot of interaction with these conversations. Do you think moms and dads are still, do you feel like they're really sold out to the traditional education route?
Yeah. I mean, I think it varies. I think it's what you do. So you mentioned private, my wife and I both went to a private, college as well. And I think, I would love my kids to go to Bethel, but I don't know that that's going to, who knows, right? And so from our standpoint, the other thing that I see is I see more and more 2-year university, like going to junior college and going to like a community college to start off with. I think that's a great route.
Yeah.
I look, in my role, I do a lot of hiring for our company or interviewing for our company, and experience is as much as that specific degree from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I think it depends what field you're in, but I think the viewpoint has changed a little bit. It's not 25 years ago where you were going to a 4-year college and that you don't really have an option. Right.
Yep. That's interesting. Yeah. I always want to touch on that. And I think something you said also too about the gap year piece, though this is you can see it in the category of just general life choice and educational choices. There's such a definite financial component to helping. I think in terms of I did this just not too long ago. I set up a gap year program for a recent high school graduate. It cost, and he fundraised for it. It was about $5,000 for a full 2-semester gap year experience. Like. And it uniquely changed. Yeah, you did excelled, got all kinds of interesting experience. It was he got to live somewhere else completely different in the United States than this area, whatever. And I look back on that and go, like, for $5,000 to experience what he experienced, where he would have paid 4 times that at least for a regular college experience.
Right.
I mean, how do you like? I think there. I just want to encourage parents there are great viable options that are not that are going to put your student in a good financial place and may actually better expose them, if it's for a year period of time, to give them greater focus for how to better use their resources, I think, moving forward. And I just couldn't be more of an advocate for that sort of thing. And no matter where you are, if you're talking with parents or if your friends are in this situation, I would just say be an encouragement to that, along the financial line, because you can do a lot with less, and there's a lot of creative ways. And I hear more and more gap year programs.
Well, and with your gap year program, you're going to get that experience and go, because I think a lot of kids get into college and don't know what they want to do.
Yeah.
And so for the gap year, they're going to get a little bit more of experience, have a little bit more time on their own, kind of discuss that. And
the way I look at it is, would you rather pay for 5 years of college because there's a major change, or 2 major changes, or would you rather help out your children, go volunteer in overseas and get that life experience, learn about time management, learn more about yourself than your sheltered bubble here, right? And then you go into college and be energized going into college, as opposed to just continuing on.
And probably a way better student.
True.
I think I will say, when it came, even in my college experience, because I got married toward the end of my undergrad, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, right, this is now my financial responsibility. Strangely enough, my GPA went up considerably. You just start, it gives you perspective, and it really does. So, okay. So as you're thinking about your own family, leading your family and leading your kids toward kind of a greater financial health, what are some? We've talked about the value of saving and just doing that, and especially, I mean, if mom and dad are not doing saving well, it's going to be even harder, right?
Sure.
It might be a full family reboot for all of us. But beyond that, anything, I guess, tips, tricks, good advice for financial literacy that's maybe in terms of thinking about like age appropriateness or certain things, or maybe certain conversations that you want to have by certain life stages, certain lifetimes. But like what's in your brain as a dad, but also as a financial someone doing financial advising?
Yeah. So I think there's a great website that I refer a lot of clients to that are in this life stage called Share Save Spend. I mentioned it earlier. Great material on there. I think there's even a podcast that you can listen to on that. So that's been helpful for me. It's where kind of the 80-10-10, the share, save, spend thing came up. So that's always important, kind of regardless of life stage. I think communication is just, it's that mindset of when we're talking about money, just having that conversation.
Yeah.
It's taboo in so many families. My parents didn't really talk about money with me very much. And, you know, it's just trying to be cognizant of those teaching moments that we can have with our kids. And I think as they get older, like my 14-year-old is going to be driving here in another, year and a half.
Yeah.
And she, we had talked for years about giving her my truck, and she just thought it was going to be given to her.
Of course.
And so it was having that, we had a 20-minute drive where we were talking about the terms of the arrangement, how we were going to go Kelly Blue Book value.
Yeah.
And I was going to give her the friends and family discount on it.
Yeah.
And so it's those, that was a learning point for her. That was like, this isn't, I'm just not going to get stuff.
Right.
I need to save, or I text her a picture of the $100 gas charge with gas prices. And that was, so she babysat extra long that week.
Yep.
And so I think it's just those teaching moments to go, you're getting closer to real life here. We're not 7 anymore.
Yep.
And the 7-year-old and the 10-year-old, it's more just having those conversations when you see the opportunity to talk about it. And the other thing is, how do we be generous with our money?
Yeah.
It's not just saving, but how do we look for opportunities to help others, just because that's what we're called to do,
Yeah. I think, one of the recent conversations I've had with my eldest is about, we use the term smart compassion, wisely using financial resources to the greatest ability of, we would say, of kingdom impact, of community impact, because it's even funny. It's like your dollar can go a lot of different ways, and in some giving instances can go farther than others, and being discerning about that. Because it was part of the conversation was, hey, why do we, or why do not we? Why don't we? Just give money to the person that's asked, hand out money in hand, and it's just that exchange, and we just go, and that's the only way that we give, or that's the only way that we help somebody out. And it was, I think it was really eye-opening to him. Again, he's bordering on those teenage years where he's like half in, half out of of hearing what I'm saying. I would not want to quiz him on the top 3 points of what I said afterwards, but I think that, to your point though, it was like, I just remember we had an interaction like that, and it all started because someone had asked for us for money, and then like the conversation I had with that person afterwards, and then it was like, sitting down with him in the car afterwards and being like, okay, what did we learn today? And he's kind of like, what, and I think, those are one of the, and I wish I did that more. I wish, to your point, it is a communication thing. It's making the most of those opportunities. To tie it back in what we've previously discussed, it does have something to do with being unhurried in your life enough to be like, okay, we can take this time. And listener, I will say this, and I mean this just at the deepest level that I can. I've experienced it in my own marriage and my own family, and I've definitely experienced it also with the people that I've cared for and counseled and coached. Finances will eat your lunch if you don't take them seriously. They will come up in and I have to imagine. I mean, I have to imagine you've had some awkward moments sitting down with a husband and wife, and they're trying to talk about money, and they're not on the same page.
Oh, for sure. And it comes back to communication.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's that communication.
Yep.
And, husband and wife are brought up in different areas. Like we all view money differently, just like every other aspect of our lives. Yeah. And so, having that open communication about what's working, what isn't, what do we do next, those types of things.
Well, I think, like you had said earlier, that when kids see their parents and their kids, their parents' spending habits, they kind of take those on. So there's definitely it's never too late or too early to start teaching your kids about money? I've heard lots of people who have their kids have lots and lots of money at the time they graduate. And I also heard people that their kids don't have any idea about money at all. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about the youth savings stuff that Everence is going to be offering here in July, because I wanted to it's a great deal. So can we talk a little bit about that? What is it, and how can we use it to teach our kids about money?
Yeah, so I've done it a couple times now with all three of my kids, and it's a really neat event. And one of the things that I really like about it is it's kind of a celebration of opening your first bank account. And so there's prizes, and they try and make it as fun as possible. There's food and snacks, and my kids remember the opportunity that they had to go do that stuff. And so, yeah, it's a day event where parents can bring in their kids to open up a youth savings account, and Everence's youth savings account is one of those unique accounts that really gets kids excited about savings. So I've got, again, 3 for my girls. And so, yeah, that'll be happening July 11th through 15th at a couple different offices, and actually offices all across the country that are Everence offices. And one of the neat things is to encourage their savings up to $1,000. We pay a higher percentage than what the going rate is. So it's 3%. We'll match some of the dollars going in. So there's an added incentive to get that started. It's actually they'll give $5 to a $15 deposit to help encourage kids to open it. But more than anything, I think it's just fun for the kids.
Sure.
It makes it, I've never seen anything like it. We all use internet banks and all these different banks these days, but it's a really cool event.
Yeah. I like the idea of actually going to a physical bank, because I don't do that much anymore.
Well, and I think especially if you have, I think it's a great idea to take cash in with you.
Sure.
We talked about that we don't normally use cash.
Yeah.
And so if you take the cash in with you to do this, open this account, then the kids are going to see, I have this, and it actually translates out to, yes, I have this, savings account, and it's this number on paper.
Yeah.
But it's representative of my cash.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not actually spending it on anything. I'm not getting anything, I'm saying this in quotes, getting anything back for it. But, because I'm saving it, you're talking about savings, the rates are better on it. And we can talk to our kids about how that, because it's a savings account, we do get, interest on that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. It's definitely something that's on our radar, something we want to do. Cause first and foremost, I'm tired of trying to shove more money into piggy banks. That's just getting old. So I think, it's that or it's under the mattress next, which doesn't seem to be real viable options either way. So maybe we should use a bank. But we're thrilled with what Everence is doing, and we want to absolutely encourage all of you to check it out. We will have a link in the show notes, further details about how you can get connected with Everence, youth savings account, and all that good stuff, and also link to what Craig has mentioned here earlier today, just places, resources to help you have that conversation. Again, sometimes talking about money can almost be as awkward as talking about the birds and the bees with you.
Sure.
It's right up there.
And it's going to force you to also have a better savings and spending habits on yourself, because your kids are going to look to you to be
more is caught than taught. Right?
Yes, that's so right. Oh golly. And I always think, and now it's been here recently. Andy, you would get this for sure. When we had so my second son Josiah had recently started Scouts here just a few months ago, and there's an initial purchasing of things because they do they do their campouts every month, and there's an initial investment of the gear, and this time I've never done it before, but this time when we went to check out and the dollar amount, the total came up on the screen. I made mention, I pointed to it and I said, so how much is that? And then just ask the question, how long do you think it takes to earn that amount of money. And then I put it in context of like with what he gets for like allowance for chores or whatever. And it's like, and it was like, to your point, it was a whole different, different ball game. And I'm hoping he'll treat that gear just a little bit nicer also as well.
You know, and you had fun with it. Like I mean, that's the thing. Like the other day I was driving with my 14-year-old, taking her somewhere, and I downloaded an app that was a taxi cab app.
Oh, yeah.
So I could show her how much it would cost to drive her to that place. But again, it was all fun and games.
Right.
But it made her think.
That's great.
This costs money for you to take me here. And so it's having those cool little interactions that really we're teaching them about money, but we're not at the same time. You know, it doesn't feel like it. It's not we're not hitting them on the top of the head with it.
Yeah, no 14-year-old wants an economics class any sooner than they have to take one. But man, I just applaud you in that, and it's really given me something to think about as well as we continue to try to bring a level of wholeness and health to our relationships, and that definitely includes money. So before we let you go, we have to put you through the
ringer.
The ringer?
No,
I don't know.
That doesn't sound right.
A little scared.
Right. All right. Well,
now it's time for the Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz.
That is right. It is time for the Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz. If you've never joined us, it's a time that we get to randomly draw cards and ask Craig random questions just to get to know him a little bit better. Joel, go ahead.
Craig, what's one bad habit that you're trying to get rid of? One bad habit you're currently trying to get rid of.
This is okay. That wasn't too bad. I can handle that.
It gets worse.
So, all right. So I get yelled at all the time because I bite my fingernails on a nail biter.
You're a nail biter.
My 7-year-old and I were having a competition on who could stop first, and I lost. So,
wow.
I feel
7-year-old
dad fail right there.
Okay.
All right. If you could ask one person one question and they had to answer you truthfully, what and who would you ask?
Wow, that's a.
See, I told you
that's a little bit more difficult.
A smidge.
I would ask Jordan how he handled losing. Because I'm a competitor, and like I don't know if you've watched the Bulls.
Yeah.
Like I forget what it was. The Last Dance, right?
Yes, the Last Dance.
He didn't like losing.
No.
You know, but just how do you use that as fuel to go forward? Just because I'm a competitor in a lot that I do. So
we're a baseball family. It's a game of failure.
Yeah, three out of 10 times, right?
100%. So next question: what do you consider your greatest achievement?
Being a dad.
Oh good answer.
So apparently it's just mine that are hard. Joel's are easy.
You're going to hit me with one here, aren't you?
If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
You do have the tough ones.
Yeah.
We need to shuffle this deck a little bit. I would be more outgoing in larger settings. I don't like it. I love this.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm good at my job is I'm really good in one or two person settings. But when I don't know a lot of people, I kind of shy away. I would love to be able to just work a room better.
That's a thing for so many people, I think. Next question. What is left on your bucket list? Do you have a bucket list?
Up here.
Okay. So it's sort of,
so
you do have one. And then what's left on it? What's one thing maybe that just pops to the top where you go, this is a thing that is...
Yeah, good question. We don't travel. I mean, I don't know. You guys just got back from Florida. So we don't travel much just because of the family dynamics and kind of where we're at in our stage of life.
Right.
My wife and I have always talked about going to New Zealand.
Oh,
that'd be good.
Australia, New Zealand, and that type of thing. So
my sister-in-law just came back from New Zealand. And for those of you that are Wordle players, guess what? If you're in New Zealand, you get a full day jump. And so she was, so she's communicating with the rest of the family. She's like, I think I'm ahead of all of you because I'm on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Yes. New Zealand. Beautiful.
All right. I have another hard one. Sorry. What is your recurring nightmare?
My recurring nightmare. You do have a tough one.
Zero balance in the savings account.
Probably drowning. I mean, that's the typical, right?
Okay, my last. My last one. Right. Which band or artist, dead or alive, would play at your funeral?
So my wife will double this down. Aerosmith.
Okay. Oh man,
Right.
She's a huge Aerosmith fan.
Don't want to close my eyes.
we'll end on those.
I don't know about that song, but
No, I know. I picked the only one that I think people would not choose. Okay.
So yes, we'll end on that note about your funeral, I guess. So see, Joel, I'm not the only one that has hard questions.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Craig, we want to thank you for coming out today and just hanging out and teaching us about how to teach your kids about money.
Man, good conversation. So grateful for it. As always, guys, you can head over to dudesanddadspodcast.com for more information, show notes, all the goodies. Love to share it with you. dudesanddadspodcast@gmail.com for all of your pithy and insightful emails. You can send us over there.
And our voicemail line, 574-213-8702, 574-213-8702.
Maybe we'll send you more gifts.
Maybe, I don't know.
Hey, guys, thanks for checking in with us again. Appreciate you listening. And until next time, we wish you grace
and peace.